So the BBC is in a bit of a bad way at the moment, and this has been very interesting. I mean, you'll notice that today the BBC's front page was Keir Starmer under siege, his own government turning on him. And Wes Streeting just came out and said, well, no, nothing of the sort has happened. I don't know what you're talking about. There seems to be nothing here. And so we've got anonymous sources saying, oh yeah, Keir Starmer's got a real problem. It was on the front page of the BBC. This must be super important. But actually what I think this is the BBC understanding that actually it's in real trouble here. Trump apparently has said that he is going to pursue legal action against the BBC. Thank God. He must have seen my podcast about it. And he is going to put them in a really awkward position. But basically, the entire political class, the liberal class in this country, the metropolitan elite, have come out to defend the BBC and their lies about him. What's the defense? Well, this is the best defense that I've seen so far from Private Eye. The rest of them are literally just appealing to a reputation that has long died. Only 20% now of people, 19% of people, think the BBC is impartial and unbiased. The rest of people, 81%, are just like, well, yeah, it's a biased institution. And so all Private Eye can do is make an argument like this. Now, this is a satirical post from Private Eye, but it's got a serious message underneath it. The allegation is that everyone attacking the BBC is no better than the BBC. They are all hypocrites for the allegations that they're making. And let's assume for a moment that that's correct. Let's just assume that everyone who attacks the BBC is merely a hypocrite. Well, you're in good company, BBC, because everyone thinks you're a hypocrite too. The institution is an institution of hypocrisy. It is not neutral. It is not independent. No one, literally no one outside of the metropolitan bubble thinks that it's neutral and independent. And the way that this has portrayed it is actually a kind of insult to the BBC. This is actually not a very good defense. BBC under attack, pot and kettle special. Did you forget that you're meant to be better than everyone? Did you forget that the BBC, and this is Ian Hislop's paper, by the way, someone who's been working for the BBC since dinosaurs roamed the earth, like who gets paid 20 grand an episode to do Have I Got News For You? Someone who's got a direct, implicit, and well, no, not even implicit, explicit bias towards his own employer, the maker of his career. Ian Hislop has a direct incentive to defend the BBC. And the thing is, the problem that the BBC has, the allegation is that they've lied, they did lie, about Donald Trump. And they did it because of an implicit bias that they have against right-wing populism, which, as the metropolitan liberal elite and the broadcaster of the metropolitan liberal elite, they obviously possess. And so they can't claim to be unbiased. They can't claim to be impartial. And that's an admission right here from Ian Hislop's publication. Donald Trump says we broadcast fake news. Well, you did. I mean, Donald Trump might be the source of a lot of fake news himself, but it doesn't change whether you broadcast fake news, does it? And it's not like this is just the one time. This wasn't the only time this has happened. This has happened many times, BBC. And so you've got no leg to stand on there. It doesn't matter how much of a hypocrite your opponent is if the allegation is true of you, and all you can say is, well, Donald Trump broadcast fake news. Well, you're a hypocrite as well. What about Boris Johnson says we're liars? Oh, does he now? Well, Boris Johnson's a liar, isn't he? He lied about Partygate. But you are also liars. You are also just as hypocritical. You can say, well, Boris Johnson's a liar. Yeah, he is, but you're also a liar, you hypocrites. This is all in the wake of you having lied and are being sued over your lies. So complaining about that, you got no room to judge. You're no better than Trump or Boris. And then you got the Daily Mail says we're peddling conspiracy theories. I actually didn't realize the Daily Mail was a very conspiracist website, to be honest, or paper. It just seems to be sort of boomer right-wing populism. But okay, let's talk about the Zionist attack on the BBC coming from within, which is what all of the people in the BBC are now saying about Robert Gibb and the paper itself, the memo itself, that has been the cause of all the controversy. I noticed that complaining about the Zionist attack on the BBC hasn't addressed any of the allegations made in the paper, in the memo, which, as I read on the stream yesterday, and I read the whole thing, all seem to be true. They all seem to be correct. From the ones that I personally am aware of, yes, they're represented correctly. And the ones that I'm not personally aware of seem plausible. So, sorry, it looks like, even though the Daily Mail is peddling conspiracy theories, you have your own conspiracy theories, and you're just, again, hypocritically pointing the finger to say, see, they're just like us. They're just as bad as we are. That is not a good argument for the sanctity of the BBC to defend itself. Because remember, the whole point of the BBC is that it's impartial. It is the best because of its neutrality in unbiased reporting. But of course, that reputation is being lost because it's not true. If it were true, then you wouldn't need to be doing this. If it were true, you wouldn't have just made up a lie about Donald Trump. If it was true, you wouldn't make up lies about anyone else either. But you do, because you are biased, you have an agenda. There is not a kind of objectivity or neutrality in the metropolitan liberal worldview. That is a lie that it tells itself in order to be self-justifying. But as your cartoon points out, Mr. Hislop, you know it's false. All you're saying is we are no better than the people accusing us. And they're no better than us. We are just the same. And you know what? I believe it. I like the Kemi Badenoch highlights poor leadership. I mean, is she wrong? I don't think she has done that. Actually. I think they've made that up. What a shock. But even if the worst leader in the world says, wow, that's some pretty poor leadership, and I'd know, doesn't make it untrue, does it? I mean, there's a reason that Tim Davies resigned, isn't there? Liz Truss says we've done huge damage to the country. Well, is she wrong? I mean, I don't think Liz Truss did massive damage to the country anyway. There was no economic crash or anything. What happened is the gilt markets went up very small, in a small amount, and the Conservatives bricked it over it. But okay, but it's worse now. So you could say Keir Starmer's done more damage to the country, but even if Liz Truss had done loads of damage to the country, that doesn't mean the BBC isn't doing damage to the country. And again, all you're saying is we are just as bad as the people we are constantly lying about. We are constantly propagandizing the British public about. All you're saying is we are the same. We are the same as the people who we hate. The Daily Telegraph says we're editing for political purposes. Well, you are. You are not unbiased, impartial, and above all of this, you are just a part of the mire, the swamp, in which the Daily Telegraph exists. And of course, Nigel Farage says we're totally biased, but he's biased, therefore what? You're not biased? Therefore, Nigel's wrong? No, he's right. They're all right about this. And what I love as well about this is they portray the BBC as this giant monolithic building, the one in London, with the pedo statue at the front, being like, yeah, no, everyone else is bad and we're good. It's like, no one thinks that. Again, that's not accountability. That is you being biased. And again, the portrayal of the BBC is this kind of monolithic institution that just towers above the user at ground level, forcing this pedo statue in your face, by the way. Because, I mean, that's another... It's not like the BBC hasn't protected its fair share of pedophiles and made them rich and famous in its time. So there's that, which is kind of weird. And then you've got, like I said, the monolithic towering building of the BBC, the vast institution that is unaccountable and thinks of itself unfairly as better than everyone else. It's like, sorry, don't you understand? You don't, in fact, I would say, don't you understand, but you clearly do not understand that this messaging makes you look evil. It makes you look corrupt. It makes you, and again, if you hadn't spent your time propagandizing people against the right, which is what you're doing here, then people might be more sympathetic. It might come off actually as if a series of people who had no legitimate grievance against the BBC are just coming out for the fun of it. And, oh, look at these inappropriate people. But no, you've spent years, decades in the case of Farage, but a decade or so for Boris and Trump, negatively propagandizing, well, maybe not Boris, but negatively propagandizing people against them. And so when they say, oh, look at these pots calling the kettle black. It's like, yeah, but the kettle is black and it's meant to not be. You are what they say you are, and your allegations of hypocrisy reflect back onto you in exactly the same way that they're projected against other people. So all I'm saying is I don't think the BBC has much of a defense. And this seems to be the best attempt that I've seen yet. Because everyone else is basically just circling the wagons and saying, nope, we don't care. La, 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 fingers in ears. We don't care. Trump is the bad man. We are the unbiased, impartial institution. And I guess we'll see him in court when he sues us.